Canton, Massachusetts. On Friday, January 28, 2022, a blizzard was forecast to hit the town within a few hours. Boston police officer John O'Keefe planned to spend the evening out with his girlfriend Karen Reed, a professor at Bentley University, and some friends. They started their night at C.F. McCarthy's and then moved to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, where they met John's colleague Brian Albert and Brian's sister-in-law Jennifer McCabe. Around midnight, Brian invited the group to his house at 34 Fairview Road, just a 10-minute drive away, for a final drink before the storm hit. At about 12:15 a.m., Karen and John arrived and parked outside Brian's house. 15 minutes later, Karen texted John saying she was heading home. Sometime between 4:23 and 5 a.m., the exact time varies in different reports, Jennifer McCabe received a call from John's 14-year-old niece who lived with him. She said that Karen had woken up to an empty bed. John hadn't come home, and he wasn't answering her calls or texts. Panicking, Karen was even more worried, especially knowing that 6 inches of snow had fallen overnight. Karen was confused and uncertain about what had happened, likely due to the heavy drinking just a few hours earlier. She couldn't remember if she had left John at the bar or outside Brian's house. Brian recalled seeing Karen's SUV parked outside his home and suggested she may have left John there. However, he was clear, John never came inside. Soon after, John's friend Kerry Roberts arrived to pick up Jennifer and Karen to help search for John. Karen, still frantic, admitted she couldn't recall much from the night before. They had been drinking heavily. She vaguely remembered an argument with John before leaving him outside Brian's house and feared something terrible had happened to him. At 5:07 a.m., Karen, Jennifer, and Kerry returned to John's house to continue searching, but found no sign of him. After an hour, they decided to return to Brian's house. At 6 a.m., still in the car, Karen suddenly spotted John's body lying in the snow outside. Sadly, when paramedics arrived, it was too late. John had frozen to death. 2 years later, John O'Keefe's death remains unsolved, and the case is still under investigation. Welcome to Bad Things. As always, we'll examine the timeline, the facts, and the theories to try to uncover what really happened to John O'Keefe. John J. O'Keefe III was born on December 8, 1975 in Braintree, Massachusetts. He graduated from Northeastern University and later earned a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Massachusetts. In 2006, at the age of 30, John joined the Boston Police Department. Known affectionately as JJ or Johnny, John was admired for his kindness and unwavering support of those around him. His family meant everything to him. When his sister Kristen passed away from a brain tumor in 2013, John was devastated. Just months later, he experienced another heartbreak when his best friend, fellow Boston officer Pat Rogers, died. Pat had been featured in the reality TV show Boston's Finest. At the time of Pat's death, his girlfriend Laura Sullivan was pregnant. John immediately stepped up to support her, eventually becoming the godfather to their son. Laura later testified about John's commitment, recalling, "He was the first person in my delivery room after I gave birth." Tragedy struck John again in 2014 when his sister's husband died of a heart attack, leaving their 2 children without parents. Once again, John rose to the challenge. He moved in with his niece and nephew in Canton and became their legal guardian. During the pandemic, John reconnected with an old flame, Karen A. Reed. Karen was born in 1980 in Taunton, Massachusetts. Her family moved to Blacksburg, Virginia, before returning to Taunton during her high school years. She graduated from Coyle and Cassidy, a private Catholic school, and later studied finance at Bentley University, where her father, an accounting professor, had also pursued his academic career. After earning her master's, Karen worked as a financial analyst at Fidelity Investments, starting in 2007. A dedicated professional, she earned a PhD in finance in 2010 and later became an adjunct professor in Bentley's finance department. Karen's students described her as a brilliant and committed instructor. During the height of the pandemic, John sent Karen a message after years of no contact. "Hey, blast from the past, how's things?" The two had dated in their 20s, but had drifted apart due to Karen's career. The pressures of the pandemic led John to rekindle their relationship. After the pandemic, they started dating again, and Karen eventually moved in with John and his niece and nephew. However, their relationship wasn't without struggles. Investigators later uncovered numerous texts revealing tensions between the couple. They often argued about communication issues, and the disagreements had escalated. Karen frequently accused John of belittling her, writing in one message that he was shitting on her. Laura Sullivan, who was part of their trip in Aruba this New Eve 2022, recalled a peculiar incident. She saw her sister Marietta upset around the pool of their accommodation. Few minutes later, she met John, who seemed as upset as her sister and was apparently incessantly receiving texts from Karen. Laura asked John what had happened, and John told her Karen accused Marietta of kissing him and had aggressively confronted her. At the end of the trip, nevertheless, Karen talked to Laura to apologize and was willing to fix things with her sister. However, it seemed Karen was still anxious that John might have been unfaithful. On the night of his death, she texted him, accusing him of having an affair. But what really happened to John on the night of January 29, 2022? The autopsy revealed that John O'Keefe died from both head trauma and hypothermia. Additionally, one of his arms showed bite marks, which appeared to be from a dog. During their investigation at the crime scene, police discovered pieces of a cocktail glass and patches of John's blood around his body. Broken tail lights were also found, and police reported they matched the damage on Karen's SUV. Karen was arrested on February 1, 2022, and her phone was taken into evidence. The next day, she was charged with manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a collision. In court, Karen, a finance professor, pleaded not guilty. On June 10, 2022, a Norfolk County grand jury indicted Karen for second-degree murder. She was held on a $100,000 bail, but made bail and has been out on release since. On May 3, 2023, Karen's attorneys, Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, continued to assert her innocence, alleging that she was framed to cover up John's murder. According to their theory, John was involved in a fight at Brian Albert's house, during which he was beaten. They based this claim on wounds found on John's arm, which they believed were caused by Brian's German Shepherd. They also suggested that John's body had been dumped outside, where he eventually succumbed to his injuries and the freezing temperatures. They argued that Kerry Roberts and Jennifer McCabe led Karen to John's body, pretending they had no prior knowledge of his death, while Boston police colleagues framed Karen for the crime. Karen's trial began on April 16, 2024, becoming a highly controversial topic. Many rallied behind her, with protesters gathering daily outside the courthouse to proclaim her innocence. A local blogger, Aidan Kearney, known by his alias Turtle Boy, became one of Karen's most vocal supporters. His community, comprising over 50,000 members, raised more than $400,000 for her defense fund. However, Kearney was arrested and indicted on October 11, 2023, on charges of witness intimidation and wiretapping. After 2 months of witness testimony and various theories, the jury was unable to reach a verdict. On July 1st, after requesting more time on 2 occasions, the jury sent a note to Judge Beverly Canone stating they were still deeply divided. Later that day, a mistrial was declared. Just hours later, the Massachusetts State Police announced that Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator in the case, had been relieved of duty. John O'Keefe's murder remains unsolved, and Karen's retrial is scheduled for January 27, 2025. The case continues to generate debate, and the fact that the trial ended in a mistrial leaves room for new evidence to emerge, potentially shedding more light on what truly happened to John on that fateful night, and hopefully bringing resolution to his tragic death. Karen killed John. The primary theory presented by the prosecution is that Karen Reid killed John O'Keefe on the night of January 29, 2022. After a heated argument with John, Karen allegedly struck him with her SUV, leaving his unconscious body in the snow, where he later died. Kerry Roberts and Jennifer McCabe later testified that, while searching for John the next morning, Karen mentioned that she might have hit him with her car. When they found his body, Karen reportedly repeated this in a panic, saying she had hit him. A paramedic initially confirmed this, but his testimony was later dismissed when it was revealed that he had lied. On February 22, 2024, prosecutors stated that DNA evidence collected from a shattered taillight linked Karen to John's death. They reported that the taillight fragments matched Karen's SUV, and the DNA on the fragments matched John's. They also noted that pieces of the broken taillight were found on John's clothing. However, on March 12th, Karen's defense team countered with a federal investigation showing that an FBI expert determined the evidence did not support the theory that John died after being struck by an SUV. The taillight evidence remains a point of contention in the ongoing court proceedings. John was killed in a fight inside the house. An alternative theory proposed by Karen's defense team suggests that John was killed in a fight at Brian Albert's house and that the investigation was mishandled from the start. Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, Karen's attorneys, raised significant concerns about the investigation, citing the failure to treat the Albert home as a potential crime scene or question the witnesses as possible persons of interest. Additionally, they pointed out that two key members of the investigative team had personal connections to the witnesses. Several people came and went from the Fairview Road residence during the night, yet no one reported witnessing Karen's SUV hit John or seeing any argument between the couple. Brian Higgins, an ATF agent who had been texting flirtatiously with Karen, left the house after 12:30 a.m., but did not see John on the ground. 5 other guests who left early in the morning reported the same, although one mentioned seeing a black blob in the snow. Even the snowplow driver, who cleared the area around the house in the early hours of January 29th, did not notice John's body. This raises questions about how John's body remained unnoticed, especially since Karen, Jennifer, and Kerry immediately saw him upon returning to Brian's house. The defense also pointed out suspicious behavior from Brian Albert, who sold his house after the incident and got rid of his dog. One critical moment in the investigation was a Google search made by Jennifer McCabe. At 2:27 a.m., Jennifer searched for how long it would take for someone to die in the cold. She later claimed the search was done much later, after John's body had been found. This search has fueled further suspicion around the timeline and events of the night. Police credibility was also undermined by their questionable methods at the crime scene, such as using leaf blowers to clear snow, which could have destroyed potential evidence. Officers also relied on unconventional tools like solo cups and grocery bags to collect evidence. Compounding these issues was the unprofessional behavior of Trooper Michael Proctor, who was dismissed from the case after texts surfaced in which he dehumanized Karen and, in one instance, expressed a wish that she would commit. Proctor's words eerily echoed a nearby case involving Sandra Birchmore, a 23-year-old woman who had been sexually exploited by local officers from the age of 13. After she became pregnant by one of the officers, they killed her and attempted to stage her death as. For many, the deaths of Sandra Birchmore and John O'Keefe highlight corruption, incompetence, and apathy within law enforcement. The defense suggests that something happened at Brian's house that led to John's death. Brian Higgins, who had been texting Karen flirtatiously in the weeks leading up to the murder, might be a key suspect. One possible theory is that Higgins harbored resentment toward John over his troubled relationship with Karen, which could have led to a confrontation. Alternatively, John might have discovered the flirtation between Karen and Higgins, resulting in a fatal altercation. However, the defense has not provided any physical evidence linking Higgins to the crime, and without witness testimony supporting this theory, it remains speculative. Moreover, there is no evidence suggesting that Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe, or the other partygoers had any motive to frame Karen for the murder. If they had witnessed Karen attacking John, they likely would have called for help. Additionally, if Brian had been involved in John's death, it seems unlikely he would have left a body in his front yard. We believe it is plausible that Karen may be responsible for the fatal accident that led to John's death. The argument between the couple is the most compelling lead at this point, as Karen herself admitted to having a fight with him before leaving. However, we don't believe that she intended to kill him. The fact that she texted him on her way home suggests she may not have realized how severely injured he was. It's also important to consider that Karen was heavily intoxicated that night. When tested the following morning, her blood alcohol level was still well above the legal limit. Karen later told Jennifer that she didn't remember much of the evening and acknowledged that she had drunk too much. From another perspective, we believe it's possible that Brian and Jennifer may have discovered John's body, but panicked and didn't know how to respond. It's conceivable that Brian's dog found John first, which could explain the bite marks on John's arm. Fearing the worst, Brian might have been terrified of being implicated, especially since John's body was on his property. He may have feared legal repercussions or professional consequences, particularly as John was a fellow police officer. We also believe that, like Karen, Brian and Jennifer's decisions could have been influenced by alcohol and the stress of the situation. After Karen called them, they might have assumed she was responsible, especially given her history of arguments with John. They may have jumped to the conclusion that she had deliberately harmed him. When the police began their investigation, it's possible that any inquiries into Brian and his home were quietly dropped to protect a fellow officer from legal scrutiny. This could explain why the focus shifted so heavily onto Karen. It's important to note that while there are several compelling elements in the case, it has not been definitively proven that John was hit by a car, and many aspects of the case remain uncertain. What we do know is that Karen's upcoming trial in January 2025 will likely bring new evidence and insights from both sides, potentially offering more clarity on what really happened that night. We hope this second trial will finally resolve John O'Keefe's case and bring peace to his loved ones. Do you agree with our analysis? Did we miss anything? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you love our content and want to support the channel, feel free to check our web shop where you can find exclusive true crime merch brought to you by Bad Things.